Welcome back to the Found in Translation Talk Show, the talk show that stacks truth on politics and today's hottest issues. This is your host, Ray Collazo. Thank you so much for joining us. If you already haven't done so, please subscribe to the podcast on your podcast app of choice and write a review to help us spread our truth to others. That's very helpful. I recently had a video version of the talk show to commemorate my birthday. Yes, I'm getting up there, people. 45. It was quite a big one for me. It provided me a time of a lot of reflection, and having the video version of the show, which you can check out on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Ray's podcast. You can see the full show. It was quite a wide-ranging conversation with me and my compadres talking about everything from fatherhood, 90s hip-hop, the life of immigrants in this country, the beautiful game, Dominicanos, Mexicanos, Hondureños, a lot of my Puerto Rican peoples. It was a lot of fun. And again, you can watch the entire video episode on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ray's podcast. But what I want to do on the podcast version of the show is include clips of that episode that are pertinent to the theme of the episode in the coming weeks, because we were so all over the place. I want to make sure, and there's so much good stuff in that conversation with Compadre Talk, I'm calling it, that I want to make sure people have an opportunity to listen to those sort of discrete clips that focus on particular topics. And again, this week, we're going to really get into the fatherhood, parenthood conversation about how we need to, as fathers, Latino men, we need to not only be fathers, and as Jorge Martinez aptly stated on the show, fatherhood ain't a side hustle. It's a full-time responsibility, full-time job in and of itself, and how we need to, broadly speaking, as Edwin Desamour very articulately says in this episode of Found in Translation, we need to just step it up. We just need to step it up for our children and for our community, because we know the women in our community are doing triple, quadruple time. And later on in the show, I'll also share a few words on the passing of a member of Puerto Rican royalty on Found in Translation. But first, I want to talk about today what's at stake with the ongoing impeachment hearings, because as watching these hearings and as this has been evolving, it's really clear to me that it goes well beyond just kind of partisan politics. And I want to share not only my thoughts about why I say that, but also the 4 things I believe we need to do and focus on and prioritize moving forward, not only through the rest of 2019 and through the 2020 election cycle, but beyond, as an advocacy community and as a country. And the public testimony we've watched over the last few days has really shed light on the true battle taking place in Washington. And like I said, it goes well beyond partisanship. You see decorated public servants, diplomats, veterans, foreign service experts, people who have dedicated themselves to the interests of the United States in the version of this country that our founders strived for, a nation led by ethics, democratic ideals, the rule of law. No one is above the law in this country. The people you see testifying on TV, and you're going to continue to see testifying on TV this week, have clearly served with those values and have put their careers and their lives on the line the past few weeks, because they were witness on some level to a president that not only is corrupt and unethical, but fundamentally has a totally different view of what the United States is. A vision of the U.S. The vision that our president is leading with and that Republicans in Congress are defending is a vision of the United States as a lawless dictatorship. And as long as a few of us or enough of us feel included in this dictator's worldview, stacking federal courts to the far right, messaging this identity of, of the disgruntled sort of being in power with a very strong threat of white supremacy, then this version of the United States is okay. Well, it's not okay. And these nonpartisan heroes that you're seeing on TV, like Lieutenant Colonel Vidman, Ambassador Ivanovich, are standing up to make that clear. You can't bribe your way into re-election in the United States. You can't put innocent people around the world in harm's way, including our military men and women, for your own selfish political and personal gain. And while these heroes stand up for truth in our Constitution, The Republicans in Congress are clowns that either don't understand what this country is about or are unwilling to defend our democracy and our ethical values for their own selfish purposes. You know, it was Republicans in the Watergate days that were like mad right-wing people, like Barry Goldwater. I know youngins don't know about Barry Goldwater. You need to Google that name, people. Historical figure in our country. That told President Nixon at the time, he had to resign because enough was enough. In those days, in the early 70s, our congressional leadership, our Republican congressional leadership, even the warmongers, people that wanted us in Vietnam forever, and people that were still pushing for segregation in our Congress at the time, understood, even those people understood our country was bigger than political parties. We ain't fighting for Democrats, folks. We're fighting for the soul of our nation. To that point, there are 4 things I believe we need to prioritize and fight for, starting now, going well past the 2020 election. The first one is we need to crush these people politically. I don't want to hear any more about we got to find presidential candidates or a political message that makes all these people feel comfortable. They ain't going to feel comfortable because they want to crush us and in many ways are succeeding with human rights violations, with stacking courts with unqualified, harsh right-wing ideologues that are going to change the legal course of our country for decades to come. They're not wanting to negotiate with us. They're not backing off what they believe in. So we have to respond to this moment in time in kind. This is not the age that many of us would like to see where everybody got along and negotiate. I don't know if that age ever existed. I think oftentimes we romanticize the Tip O'Neill Reagan era, but nevertheless, that's not where we're at right now, people. Maybe we'll be there in 5-6 years. That would be nice, but that's not where we're at right now. Where we're at right now is we have to crush these people politically and take control of the ship before it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. You don't negotiate with fools. You don't negotiate with crooks. You don't negotiate with egomaniacs. You don't negotiate with we didn't negotiate with the Ku Klux Klan. We didn't negotiate with the Confederates. And we ain't negotiating with these people. Can you imagine trying to negotiate with someone that still believes that this president has their best interest at heart? There's nothing you can do with that but crush it politically and make it politically irrelevant, that worldview. The next thing we need to do, the next administration has to prioritize in Congress, and as a country, we have to prioritize a focus on ethics and transparency on the federal level. Trump has exposed the cracks in the system, and unfortunately, our Attorney General has exposed the cracks in this system that can allow a president to do such harm to our legal framework and our Constitution and kind of work within the margins. We need to pass laws that build in more checks and balances and transparency in our political process. Campaign finance legislation and holding tech companies accountable the way we do media outlets would also be big parts of that. We need to invest from an education perspective. The third thing I say that we need to do moving forward to take our country back, build a stronger democracy, is we need to invest from an education perspective, K through 12 and beyond, in civics education. That is something that is slowly and not so slowly dissipated in our education policy priorities. As a country, we need to make major investments so our children understand what this country really stands for. You know, it's a small part of it, but it's a part of it nevertheless, is that some of the issue with some folks is that they just don't understand the simple nuance between standard negotiations and foreign policy. But what Trump has done to use the federal government to leverage political advantage for himself, that's a whole different animal. And unfortunately, people are being misled and don't understand these nuances. If our population doesn't understand what our country is supposed to be, it's not going to be that. And lastly, I would say, and maybe this sounds a little self-indulgent, but nevertheless very important, support independent media. We can't let basic cable be our primary source of information. We need to support journalists, activists, podcasters that are spreading our truth like we try to do on Found in Translation. Let's hear some compadre talk from a recent birthday special with my homies Elbert Garcia, Jorge Martinez, and Edwin Desamour talking about fatherhood. It ain't a side hustle, my friends. Fatherhood and much more, and we'll get back on Found in Translation. I got these two dads here. One of the things I admire you guys, I'm a daddy, and I think I'm a decent one, but you guys got girls. And that, to me, is a special journey. I'll be jumping this conversation. I know there's some dads going crazy right now as we speak. Like, I mean, this is foreign territory for me. How do we handle this? So, Elby, talk to me about, give us some advice, give us some words of wisdom, and I know Jorge's going to jump into that conversation.
See, that's it. When you have girls, you're left speechless. You have no that's crystallized it right there.
That's about right. Jump in, E. Talk to us.
No, I think I'm speechless. Every day is a new thing. I mean, we're trying to raise strong Latina women. I think we're trying to raise them to have self-confidence when we know that the world knocks you down. And that's hard, but then you got to actually you have to parent them. And so that's also hard too. So how do you discipline folks and have them keep their ego and all at the same time, have them listen to you, right? Clean the room, do the basic stuff, so what are you doing? Exactly, right? And mine is definitely witty and speaks back, and I want her to do that. Just sometimes I don't want her to do that to me. So that
it is so funny because we live. I mean, Elby's down in Florida. I'm in New York, and it's the exact same story. I literally just came back from a basketball game. I have 3 daughters, and the twins play basketball, and just drama, and they express themselves, they talk back. My wife is ready to choke a child because we grew up in the 80s. Like, you talk back, there was a hand in your face in a minute, and you're just like, I can't do that. Oh, but I'm so close to doing that.
And I think I amaze myself at how much sometimes I sound like my own father, right? In terms of saying stuff and doing stuff. And even the other things, even
my day, we wouldn't be able to do that. I was like, yeah. Gri, my wife always is putting her hand in the air because I'm like, I remember I used to, you don't want to take the train? I used to have to walk 10 blocks to take the train to go up the hill to go to school to whatever. And I'm like, and Gri's like, you lived in Manhattan. What are you doing? You're not in the campo. You're like, what are you talking about? But I tell you, man, the thing is, we're trying to, I'm also keeping an eye out on you, Ray, because, you've got 2 boys. So it's like, I can see what's coming ahead,
What's coming ahead, man? Yo, my oldest is 10, and I'm like, I'm going to blink, and this kid's going to be going to have a car, and going to be problems. The girls are getting a little older, so let me ask you this question, Jorge. How do you, they see everything, they know everything, they have access to so much information. That's the thing, one of the big differences, right? So, how do you balance not sheltering them at the same time, trying to prevent them from, try to keep some innocence from childhood? You know what I'm saying? It's a tough balance,
It's a tough balance. For example, they're good about that they're in sports and they do different things, but the reality is that they're on their phones. They're on these tablets. And what do you do? They don't have Instagram and some of the social media stuff, but they had TikTok for a hot minute. You had to figure out what the heck is TikTok, and you're like, oh, that's what that is. And then their friends have stuff, right? And you have to control that. If you try to shelter them too much, then they're going to find out stuff from their friends, and their friends are not the ones you want them to learn firsthand about stuff. So it's a balance because you cannot, unless you're going to homeschool your child and shut down all internet media, unless you're going to turn into some third world government dictator where you just shut down all electronic media, you can't. So you have to really give them rope. But what you best can do is monitor and supervise. And, my wife gets on me all the time. I was like, you need to stay on top of it. For example, when the whole TikTok thing came out, she's like, do you know what that is? Do you know what's going on? It's like, oh, okay. That's just one example of some kind of social media where you're just like, all right, is this good? Is this bad? How do you control it? But yeah, I think the path we've gone is you can't just ban stuff. You kind of have to put, you can do that, but I'm going to put some parameters around this so I can see what's going on. Yeah, I gave you a phone, but you best believe I'm going to have your password. I'm sorry. It is what it is. I'm not going to try to be on it every 2 seconds, but I can check your text messages. It's the reality of what it is.
You got to. You have to do it. I think for me, the hardest thing also down here too is, we live in Miami, and Miami, it's not like up northeast where there's a bunch of stuff. So for us, it's, keeping her aware of stuff, keeping her aware of, other folks. It's, Miami's a mad segregated city. So how do you also raise, a child that is aware? And then also the other thing too is that, at the end of the day, we're middle-class folks, right? And so, I learned certain things, and Gri learned certain things about her life, because we lived it, right? We saw, and so how do you inspire a bunch of kids, or how do you inspire like a bunch of middle-class kids who don't maybe have, she's talking about does she need to go to college? Does she need to do, I always knew that from the very early. Yeah, get good grades, go to a good school. That's how I'm gonna get a good job. My daughter doesn't have, my daughter, sees some of her friends and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, freewheeling. And does grades really matter? And she, at some point she was like, oh, I want to be an actress. I don't need to go to college. And you were like, oh yeah, you do. Even if it's, BMCC or something, you're going to go to somewhere. So, I think that's
but the other thing too is, and we were on the cusp of this, is that college is so expensive now. And that student loan debt piece is
that's a
heavy.
Waiting to burst. Yes.
But it's like, I'm not saying that I'm discouraged or it makes me think twice, but it does make me think twice. Would that automatically be the best option for them?
Well, yeah. The other thing that's happened that we would never think of is that the reality that sets in that, we met each other through Columbia. So we went to an Ivy League school. It is what it is. That's a very positive experience. And early on, you would have thought that's what I want to strive my child to strive for. They should just do the same experience as me as an Ivy League school, the whole line, the top of the line.
Yeah, the most competitive. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now you're going to go through this whole middle class experience, and you realize, is it worth it for them to be like $100,000 in debt to get that Ivy League degree? Is it worth that? Is that worth all of that? Maybe not. So now you're kind of looking at different alternatives. But it's a little bit of a catch-22 because I think I'm still in a world where, it's great to get a middle-of-the-road degree, but as a Latino, when you get into that workplace, what's going to make you stick out? And, that's definitely an advantage that a lot of us had, is that because we had that degree, it at least gave us a little bit of a playing field. And when I say level playing field, sometimes it was a level playing field with a kid who went to a regular college. But being a Latino in an Ivy League at least put you on the level playing field with the kid who went to the
state school. Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
We think a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things haven't changed in terms of how we're perceived out there in the workforce. So, I still look around. I work in a technology field, and, African-American wise, it's even worse. I think in my department, which has like 200 people, there's probably like maybe 1 or 2 African-Americans, and then Latinos, there's maybe like 2 or 3. It's I learned early on the head nod. I was like, oh, okay. I remember that. I was like, you're the only two. You're the only two in the whole building. Like, yeah, we got each other's back. I didn't know where that came from. Just happened.
You know how it is. You know how it is.
It's 2019. It's still the case. It's still the case.
No doubt. No doubt.
I'm old enough now that it doesn't affect me as much. I'm not as like, oh my God, like what am I doing? I feel out of kilt. I've been in this environment long enough that stuff slides on me. I kind of know how to fit my place. I'm comfortable with myself. But that was a harsh reality when I first got out of, got into corporate America. Like, you stick out.
No doubt. We're talking that daddy stuff and leadership, mentorship. Had to bring on Edwin Desamour into this conversation. Edwin, we're going to be collaborating on something early next year, so really excited about it. Edwin, say hello to the family, brother.
Hey, everybody. Happy birthday, Phil.
Appreciate you, Edwin. So, Edwin, Jorge, I think you heard some of the conversation. Edwin does a lot of mentorship with his sons and his family. He actually has his own podcast and radio show that talks about these issues with his children. It's a wonderful thing. So, Edwin, we're talking about raising these kids out here, and you were on our Father's Day show. So just pick up from where Jorge left off, man. Give us some wisdom and what this initial conversation has sparked in your mind you want to share with people.
I think basically it's just about motivating men all over again. There's a lot of things that are happening today in society that are I just feel as though our Latino men are feeling that they're not worthy or capable of doing or stepping to the plate. So just really motivating them and encouraging folks and just bringing awareness that dads are needed. Dads are actually needed.
So, Edwin, you're dealing with a lot of the underground issues in the community, and unfortunately, our neighborhood North and the community you serve in North Philly has been going through a lot in terms of a lot of street crime lately, and some of the ongoing issues related to the opioid crisis. So you're dealing with it on the most urgent level in a lot of ways. So talk to us, man. I remember walking them streets in the South Bronx with Jay, and he would come to visit us in North Philly, and we were cool, but we weren't that cool. And, and even just trying to be with your own people and socialize sometimes felt a little unsafe. So, and we have a lot of young people in our community just trying to survive and be who they are. So jump in, talk to us about that dynamic nowadays. And what do we do, man? There's a lot that needs to be done to protect our kids out here.
I think first of all, that we just really need to step to the plate and not wait for something tragic to happen. It seems like we always wait for tragedy to happen before we react or say enough is enough. Enough is enough already. We have too many kids entering the system. We have too many kids dropping out, getting killed in the streets. So it's about time that we rally up and step to the plate. Can you imagine if every man said, no one is selling drugs in front of my house? Our neighborhoods would be straight. The streets don't have a play if the house is right. And we need to figure out how to get our homes right. And if the homes are right, the streets won't have a chance. Everybody blames the streets, but the streets are just there. But the streets won't have any type of say so or claim if we have good homes and good communities. And that's what we need to bring back again, community.
Jorge, I know, man, one of the things that got you through, man, I mean, a strong family and a strong dad. And a lot of our young brothers don't have that, man. I know that's a big part of this equation.
I will tell you that economically, my family may have never been top of the line, but I knew that I had an advantage over most of the kids growing up where I was because my parents were there, and it was like they were on me, like I say, white on rice. It sucked being a kid, but looking back, like that was the key to make me jump ahead of other people because they were present. And that was a disadvantage that other kids had, that they had to do even more to kind of get over, to do it on their own. And I had that. So being present is so important as a dad. And people just have to understand that whether you're raising a daughter or a son, being present in your child's life. And it takes effort. I mean, it takes sacrifice. Look, man, you may want to be Friday night playing cards with your boys or Saturday going out and doing some things, but sometimes you just got to be present in your kid's life.
That's right.
Do things that they want to do, go to things. It's a sacrifice. Like having a kids is not a side hustle. It's not a side gig. It is present. You are going to have to give up stuff. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, but it is rewarding. I mean, as much as that might sound like, oh, why would I want to do all that? It is so rewarding, but you got to put the time and effort into it. And that just comes first. And it's, like I told my daughters, like, yeah, I get home from work. I have to drive you to a basketball practice. It's what I do, but they look for me. They expect me to be there. As opposed to me being like, yo, I got stuff to do. I'll be there. I'm getting a paycheck. I'm getting paid. I'm bringing food to the table. Isn't that enough? No, it's not. And it's a second job, and you sign up for it. And it's huge, man. Like you said, the biggest reason I got to where I'm at is because my mom and dad were there. I mean, that doesn't mean that people can't make it because your mom and dad are there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's single moms who are holding it down. It is not a disrespect at all to them. But when you have both, whether you're divorced or you're together, but when you have both in their lives, it's such an advantage to that child that it just frees them to so much. So whatever your situation is, be present. Whether you're together or not, wherever that situation is, be present in that child's life, but treat it like a full-time job, not a side gig where it's like, yeah, maybe I'll show up today. Maybe I'll do something the other day. It's a sacrifice. And I know I've seen what we all have to do on top of our day jobs.
Before we introduce DJ Rico, Edwin, talk to us about, one of the things I really admire about your leadership, man, is talking about the dynamic of parenting when you're not with your former partner, your spouse, what have you. So I know especially a lot of men, but a lot of people, a lot of couples, a lot of people are co-parenting, and that's an issue that means you have to put more effort oftentimes. So share some nuggets on that. Then we'll introduce Khaled's beefcake double here. So
I think it's a perfect segue. He was mentioning how parenting is a full-time job, not a side gig, right? So usually when we go to work, I don't care who you are, when basically almost every job that someone, when they go to work, there's somebody at their job they don't like, right? So you don't stop going to work because you don't like that person, because you still have a job to do. So you end up working with people you don't like, but you still have to get the job done. It's the same thing when you have differences with your former spouse or the mother of your children, however it works, but you still have to figure it out. Whether you like this person or not, it's still a full-time job to make it work with this person to raise your kids. And it's a lot of swallowing your pride to move forward. It's about the children and not about the couple.
Thanks, compadres. That was a great, just a sample of the incredible, epic conversation I had with my compadres on my very special video birthday special. I encourage you to, if you want to watch the entire thing, I mean, we get into, let me tell you something. I encourage you, go to youtube.com/Ray's podcast. Because that 15 minutes you just heard was just a segment, and I encourage people to watch the whole thing. And particularly, there was a segment where we talked about living in New York in the 90s. At the intersection as Latino college students living, studying in Manhattan and in New York, where we were living as students, as activists, as club promoters, as, you know, just youngsters trying to build a life through education advocacy in New York City at the time, and trying to have some fun too, where we were talking about how we were interacting with people that were part of the golden age of hip hop in the early 90s in New York. Seeing and being a part of sort of the last great era of New York salsa. We saw the birth of people like Mark Anthony, saw the birth of, the last great era of New York salsa, the birth of the Dominican music scene, the tropical music scene, merengue, the very beginnings of the bachata generation, and seeing salsa merengue sort of in full bloom in New York. And then, of course, now to this modern age, those same, the next generation of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans in the tropics and in New York have birthed things like the bachata boom and reggaeton. So really that trajectory it was a great cover. The whole thing is great, but I really encourage people, if you're a hip hop head, if you're someone that's in that kind of history, and I encourage my millennials, my bachateros, my Salvadoreños, and my folks in the West Coast that just found out about this stuff. It gives you a good sense of, from folks that remember the birth of some of those movements. So really great conversation. Lastly, the Found in Translation family wanted to share our deepest sympathies to the Clemente family on the recent loss of Doña Vera Clemente Zavala. The widow of baseball icon Roberto Clemente was truly Puerto Rican royalty and the first lady of baseball. Royalty in many respects. Doña Vera lost her beloved husband, almost 50 years ago, after a tragic plane accident while Roberto was traveling to Nicaragua to bring supplies to victims of a hurricane. Vera Clemente moved on not only to raise her 3 sons as a widow with grace, but continued her husband's legacy of public service by establishing the Ciudad Deportiva Roberto Clemente in Puerto Rico, which he had envisioned as a place that ended up being a place where hundreds of thousands of young people have been engaged in recreation, education, and health services. Without this center, you may not have had future and prominent other Puerto Rican Hall of Fame baseball players like Roberto Alomar, Ivan Rodriguez, and so many others. She also advised Major League Baseball on choosing the winner of the annual Roberto Clemente Award, an honor given since 1973 to a player who best represents the game of baseball through character, community involvement, philanthropy, and positive contributions, both on and off the field. Doña Vera Clemente, besides being an incredible lady and on so many levels, quietly carried on another one of her husband's legacies. Quietly, but very notably, by living her life and raising her boys unapologetically as Afro-Latinos. Neither her or her children ever minimized their blackness, both as ambassadors of the Puerto Rican community, but ambassadors of the great sport of baseball, which to this day struggles on some level with the diversity within its own game. The Clementes have done so much for the city of Pittsburgh, for the island, the Puerto Rican nation, for the sport of baseball, and for humanity. I tip my hat to the Clemente family. Descanse en paz, Doña Vera. Your sons in the larger Puerto Rican community will continue the Clemente legacy of service. Thanks for listening to Found in Translation. Check out this week's post-debate special. I mean, I'm on right after the debates. Check us out on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook Live, Periscope, as you can check out on Twitter at Ray's Podcast. And then, of course, subsequently, you see the video and podcast on your podcasting YouTube feeds. Continue the conversation with us on social media, on Twitter at Ray's Podcast. Let me know what you think about this compadre conversation we're having about fatherhood in our community, as well as what we need to do to regrow and reinvent our democracy, because we're really at a crossroads as a country right now. And keep stacking that truth, mi gente. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch us later in the week as we talk about the debates happening later this week, and have a wonderful day.